Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Munoz, CEO of the experience agency, The Flash. Each week I bring on a different person who's doing some game-changing things, and this week's episode is no different. I'm super psyched to have Ed Casabian, who's doing Year Volunteer, an incredible social impact project that's going to change the way you view volunteering. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Ed.
Hey. Hi, Laura. How are you?
Good. It's been forever.
Yes, I know.
I think we met early on in the early 2011, 10s, 12-ish area, back when there's this new thing called Uber getting started.
Indeed.
And you were the reason I took an Uber in the first place, because you convinced me that it was safe. And I think I was like, dude, there's no way as a woman I'm ever going to set foot in a car with some guy with an app. And no, just here's some free cards. Try it.
Yes. I had, those were like the AOL CDs back in the day. I had those black Uber discount cards, and I handed them to anyone who would take one.
Literally anyone. I think early on when we first started doing our monthly networking events, even when was one of our first sponsors, because we had these discount cards. I remember people being like, what is this Uber thing? It's like, oh, it's a ride home.
Push a button and get a ride.
Yeah, it's easy peasy. So yeah, it's been a crazy ride for you since then, I can imagine.
It has, yeah. I think when we met, there might have been 2 or 3 employees in the New York office, and
unreal. It's changed a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. I mean, when we met, they were only black cars.
Yeah, I think
Uber X was not even a thing yet.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, because it was I think we got a Mercedes Benz was the very first Uber I got, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, maybe I can deal with this. Maybe. So with the show, we always start with the very first question that everyone asks, and it's always interesting to see where it ends up. So Ed, what was your first job?
I was prepared for this. I took a listen to some of your other podcasts. My first job was in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, working as a line cook. And it's very funny because I just needed a job that summer and walked down Main Street looking for different restaurants. I kind of wanted to be a busboy. I was just whatever.
Yeah.
And I met the chef, and he was like, well, I don't have any busboy positions, but I need a cook. I was like, okay. And I didn't really know how to cook at all.
No formal training here.
No, but he was like, I'll teach it. And he hired me. I went home and told my mother, I got a job. She's like, oh, you're going to be a cook. She's like, can't even cook an omelet. which was true. But that was a really amazing experience. I was kind of I wouldn't call myself the chef, but I was like the head line cook. So I had to organize all of the timing and basically plate the meals, and then get them out to the restaurant. And how
old were you?
I was 17.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
And it was like a fine dining restaurant. Oh. It was very stressful. It might have been like one of the most stressful jobs I've had. But that was kind of a summer thing. My first quote unquote professional job was working here in New York in finance, actually, as equity research analyst. And I covered the restaurant industry. So
you went back to where you were.
What's that?
You went back to where you were.
Exactly. And we basically made investment recommendations for publicly traded restaurant companies. So I learned a lot about our food system. A lot of it's not great.
Imagine.
But interesting experience to understand how the inputs of affected these companies.
So basically jumping into something you'd never done before and just sort of figuring it out, and then doing research to help make out the best possible analysis kind of did prepare you for the job that you kind of had a little bit later.
Yes. I definitely have jumped around.
A little bit. So yeah, when we met, you were, I think, one of the very first employees of Uber in New York. Mm-hmm. And what was that like?
That was I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I have long been fascinated by the taxi industry and thought it was very inefficient. you'd come home from the airport and there's this huge line of people waiting and everybody's kind of going in the same direction. So this idea of Uber Pool was something that I had had for a long time. Like, if everybody's going in the same direction, why aren't you
just do it together,
sharing a ride?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd be in the taxi line, be like, where are you going? Like, you want to share a cab? Right. And people would sometimes do that. But when I learned about this app-enabled car service, I was very intrigued, particularly when they got a cease and desist in San Francisco. It's like, that they must be doing something.
Right. If that usually is an indicator that you're doing something right when someone's trying to sue you.
Right. And then they launched in New York, and I took a ride the day they launched. And like you, I don't think it was a Mercedes, but it was a SUV that pulled up, and I was like, wow, this is like, press a button and it was there. And took a ride, and I was like, I want to work at this company. It seems just revolutionary and such a better experience. And that was when it was like this black car service. So I was a little shocked at how expensive it was, but I thought it was a much better experience than I was used to. So I tweeted it at them. There's a story about one of the first employee who tweeted and got his job. He was like the first hire at Uber, but I tweeted at Uber New York and was like, I want to work here. And they had just hired a team, but they were like, stay in touch. So a few months later I wrote, and they needed somebody. They were actually switching over that team, and I got hired and off to the races. I had no idea what I was doing. I had worked in finance. I was now a community manager, but I just wanted to work there. I didn't care what it was.
And so you're one of the first employees at Uber New York, and then it's sort of hockey sticks in this insane way. Mm-hmm. What was that ride like?
We had a constant problem of getting enough drivers. It was just people. So that was our biggest challenge. But it was 24/7 type thing. Like, I answered, I think, from 2011 to late in 2012, I answered every single customer service ticket that came into Uber New York City.
Oh my God.
And so,
did you sleep at all that entire year?
So the last thing I would do before I went to bed was check to see if anybody had lost something in an Uber. And the first thing I did in the morning was to check to see if what had happened overnight, because that was often when the craziest things, or...
Well, of course, because everyone's drunk, and then you're Uber.
Exactly. And so Friday and Saturday nights were...
They weren't your Friday and Saturday nights anymore.
They were not. But it was a ton of work, but it was very exciting, and you saw the work that you did every single week, you saw translate into just incredible growth. And drivers, at this time, like, the drivers loved it, the riders loved it. Like, it really felt like the most anyone would ever complain about Uber was like the cancellation fee, which of course that changed. But I often say, like, customer service is the first channel of marketing, and I would just say that as we grew the team, and I hired many people to handle customer service, because we handled that in New York for like a long time, for maybe, I don't even know when we started to sort of have that be more centralized. But I would customer service is the first channel of marketing, and if we can respond to somebody in 5 minutes and get them their phone back, that can't happen in a taxi.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if I told you, but like, I lost my phone on my way to my friend's baby shower on a Sunday in a New York City cab. That's the last cab I've taken in Manhattan, because it was a nightmare trying to get my phone back, because I paid with a credit card, and it was 2012, and like I was rushing to get to the shower because it's like on the Upper East Side. And, like, I got there, so I was with a bunch of my friends. Like, okay, I wasn't missing my phone. But, like, then to, like, get through the rest of the day, like, you realize how much this becomes part of your body.
Sure.
And I remember I, like, raced back downtown because I could do a ping on the Apple Store and see where it was. I raced down, and it looked like it was in some, like, parking garage. And by the time I got there, it was gone again. And at that point, I was like, I can't. So then I was like, okay, hi Apple Store, can I just get a new phone?
Yeah.
So I literally had to buy a phone that day.
Oh,
and I was like, this is ridiculous.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
But yeah, I haven't taken the cab since because I was like, I hate you all. like fine with my stuff. Like this isn't cool. So how does it go from being like you and like a few people to like how when you left in like 2017, 2016? How big was New York office?
Oh, hundreds. And we had an engineering team. I remember it was really hard to like get approval to hire somebody, but like once we saw what the growth was going to be like, we started to hire people much more quickly. So, and my life got a little more sane. But not much.
Touch more. So it's growing, it's got to a point, and then you're just like, you know what, like now's a good time to try and do something else.
Yeah, I was 6 years is a long time.
Anywhere. Much less.
Yeah.
Your 6 years was probably 3 times as much. Like, if you were working 24/7.
We call them Uber years.
Yes.
But it's just been like a great experience, and I was getting married at the time and just felt like the right time to take the next step. Yeah, the next step.
And so you decide to take some time away. Hopefully, I hope you slept, you got some travel.
I did. I'm very fortunate. No shortage of traveling in my life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so now you're doing something new, which is when I saw on LinkedIn what you were up to, and I was like, no, this looks super interesting. So what made you decide to do Year Volunteer?
Yeah, so at Uber, I actually had done some organizing of volunteer projects within the New York office, and I think something I've found repeatedly amongst my peer group and New Yorkers is people want to do things, but they don't always know how, or unless it's like put in front of them, it just is hard to volunteer in New York. And people are very busy in New York, and I understand that, but I've always loved volunteering, and it's given me a much better sense of the city I live in. It helped me develop community, helped me meet people that I otherwise wouldn't meet. And so I had this idea. I'd been doing some volunteering on and off. I was like, what if I really devoted myself to this and devoted some time to it, and by doing that helped inspire other people to get involved and find something that's meaningful to them in their community and donate their time or donate their skills and know-how. So that was the genesis of Year Volunteer. I've actually had the idea for a while. I like these sort of project-based. I think it's amazing how much you can transform your view on something or your life in a year. And I've had this idea for a long time to devote it, and I'm in a position now where I'm fortunate enough to be able to do so. And so on MLK Day, which is a day of service, that's when I sort of decided I'm going to launch this and start this and share it with my network, which is always always a nervous thing, how people are going to react. And but people have been very supportive and excited about it, and said, like, again, like, I want to volunteer with you, like, help me figure out the places that I can do it. So it's still very early. I feel like our conversation will probably be very different. This is like a week ago that I really sort of committed to it. But I think there's just a lot of opportunity to get people involved and more aware of what's going on in the city.
Awesome. And so, how are you starting? Because it's always been this thing in New York about getting people to volunteer in a way that they can manage. Mm-hmm. So, like, part of the reason that I stay volunteering with the one organization that I have is because it's always fit within my kind of crazy time schedule. Yeah. And the reason I found that was an article 11 years ago in New York Magazine.
Wow.
And it said, basically, based on your New York schedule, how can you volunteer? Like, can you do an hour a year, an hour a week, an hour a day? And then they gave you different things that you could pick from. And so the hour a year thing sounded like good to me. I think I can even do that.
Yes.
This is before I had my company, but I was working in corporate, and I had zero time to do anything. But it was with this organization called the Student Leadership Network of Schools. And so basically, they're all girls' schools here in New York City. And they noticed that even though these schools were in Harlem and different parts of the city, the people who were coming to volunteer didn't look like the students. And I was like, oh, so you guys can't get black people to them. I get it. Because we're all busy. Yeah. And I was like, because I think there's a world of nonprofits where it's more white women who are more able to do that. And so I was like, this is crazy. Right. So I volunteered at that organization. Fast for 11 years, I'm now on their secondary board. I've got 15 of my good friends of mine to sort of either be on the leadership board with me or to volunteer every year as part of it. So there is something that when you see a friend doing it, and then you sort of make it's okay.
Yes. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. It's called the Student Leadership Network.
Yeah. So they have two. And I'll happily connect with them. Yeah. Because they've got an all-girls side, but they also have things called the College Bound Initiative, which is for co-ed college counselors in schools, and they're always looking for volunteers and mentors. And I think with your incredible background, they'd love to have you. So I got one for you.
I'd love to talk to them. And I think what you said is interesting about sort of it's okay, or volunteering is that you're doing it and your friends see you do it. But I find that a lot of people are shy about sharing their volunteer experience, or don't want to. It doesn't come up in everyday conversation, and that I think it is something else I want to do with this project, which is highlight people like you and people who volunteer in their communities in the hopes that will inspire people, because that to me is it's just not a conversation that people often have about
I think it's
volunteer work.
I think there is a sort of weirdness around it, which I don't get. Because it's okay, you don't have to save every single child. Right. Or you don't have to give to every single organization with millions of dollars. I think it's sometimes people think that you have to give all this time and you don't have to do it. And that's why I always tell a story about it was the 1 hour a year, where it's if you could do that, anyone can do that. If you put your phone down and stop going on Twitter, you can go pack meals. Right. I've got a friend who there's another one that might be good for you. She does the back to school backpacks every year, and so she goes to Trinity Church, and it's 4 hours, and she packs backpacks, and she's got it down to a science. Right. And the day she's a crisis manager for world leaders, but she loves her 4 hours where she can do pencils, book bags, and bookmarks, and she puts the stickers in, and that's the thing that she does. And I think it's very much removing sort of this heavy stigma around either it's volunteer shaming, well, why aren't you doing enough, or I don't think I have done enough in order to volunteer. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out for you.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point in the amount of time you have to volunteer, because New Yorkers are extremely busy, but there are things, even just a half an hour. An organization I'm actually on the board of this organization called Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, and they are addressing the food waste issue. That 40% of food in this country is wasted. A lot of it comes from restaurants, and what they do is they have a network of volunteers who pick up food from a restaurant just as they're about to close, and then walk it or bike it to a shelter that's nearby. And they're filling this gap. There's probably heard of City Harvest or Food Bank of New York. And those are great organizations, but they require 100 pounds of food to get, because they use trucks mostly for rescuing the food. For picking up. So RLC, or Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, they just have people, this volunteer network. I did one actually on MLK Day that was right in my neighborhood. I picked it up from this restaurant and took it to the YWCA, the women's shelter in where is it? Downtown Brooklyn. So that's literally like a 30-minute commitment.
And you did it.
Yeah. And then there's also New York Cares, which a lot of people, when I talk about this year volunteer project, that's a place that a lot of people point me, and that's just an incredible organization. You can search by day, you can search by time, you can search even by like the subway line that you're on.
But yeah, I don't know the 6 line, otherwise I volunteer.
Right. So, and that's where I found a few of the organizations I've volunteered with so far.
And is Catch a Fire still around?
Catch a Fire is another great one. Yeah, that's I think they're doing really well.
Wow, because they kind of started at the same time we all were kind of first starting out here.
Yeah.
I remember going to some of their early events where it's like, so you've got skills that people that volunteer nonprofits need, because oftentimes the biggest problem with nonprofits is that they're not marketers and they're not finance people. They just want to do good in the world. So like the marketing and finance parts are oftentimes where they need the most assistance. So it's good to see that they're still
they're like, I would say they're the leader in skills-based volunteering. So if you want to do something that's connected with your work or where you have expertise, that's like a great way to do it, and probably as impactful as it gets. For me, this project is about sort of a little bit more about like getting out in the community and dealing directly with people. But I think Catch a Fire is a great resource for.
So so you're about a week and a half in. What are the ones you've done so far?
So I'm a week and a half in, but I've been doing this, kind of figuring out if it was something I wanted to do for an entire year. The one I would say, I guess I'll start with the ones that are less of a time commitment, but like rescuing leftover cuisine is one. There's an organization in downtown Brooklyn called the Arab American Family Resource Center. And that was started by Arab Americans, but it's open to all. And I think they have a number of programs, but the one I've been working with is the citizenship prep. So it's English conversation classes and citizenship preparation. So that's been I've worked with the same woman a couple times already, and that I taught English after I graduated university. So I have a little bit of a skill set there, and I had forgotten how much I enjoyed teaching English. So that was one. And some that are a bit more of a time commitment. There's an organization called North Brooklyn Angels in Greenpoint, Williamsburg. They have a commercial kitchen, so if you like to cook, it's a good place to do it. They get donated food from the farmers market, and then they use what they have and they prepare these meals. And they have this amazing food truck. It's this big blue food truck that if somebody lives in Williamsburg or Greenpoint probably has seen it. And they have 5 different locations where they go during the week and hand out meals to those people who need them. I don't think people need to qualify in any way. It's just like if you're hungry and you need a meal, like that, they're there. And I've been there a couple times as well. It's not exactly in my neighborhood, but I bike everywhere. So
you don't Uber everywhere?
No, I like to bike. Yeah, the days of free credits are over. When I first started there, I had unlimited rides. I could go anywhere.
Not so much.
Yeah. And then on the sort of more of a commitment and in terms of the training and the hours, I've been working with the Red Cross, which is I always thought of the Red Cross as going to international areas and like hurricane relief and that sort of thing. But the Greater New York Red Cross I've been working with the disaster action team, they call it. And what they do is they provide assistance to families if there's like a fire, or if people are ordered to vacate their apartment building because it's unsafe living conditions. And so the Red Cross does many things, but the disaster action team is part of that first response. So once the fire is put out and hopefully people are safe, the Red Cross is there to get people to a hotel for a couple nights, to give them some like a debit card with some cash on it, and then when in that process they're going to the Red Cross to figure out a longer term solution, but it's a friendly face there, and I mean, these are life-changing events for people. Totally. And that's you're on a shift. So I'm on a shift from 8 hours. So I've been doing the early morning shift from what is it, like 6 to 2. And if something happens in that time, then we're getting in the car and getting there as quickly as we can.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of the heaviest one, I would say. But the Red Cross has tons of great training resources, and literally if you want to volunteer, like there's any
thing.
There's a thing. Yeah.
And the thing you were talking about last night with the actually physically counting homeless people, like I don't even think you don't even think that that's something that happens here in the city, because like, wait, the homeless population keeps increasing. Mm-hmm. So how was that for you?
Yeah, so that's the hope count. I'd done it maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but the hope count is 1 day a year, and the goal is to canvass the entire city, the 5 boroughs, and it's the Department of Homeless Services is the city agency that organizes it. It's an incredible undertaking. When I did it the first time, you were literally filling out pieces of paper, and it's intimidating to go up to somebody who may be sleeping, and if it is what is it, code blue. That code blue means it's below 32 degrees with a wind chill. If it is code blue, they ask that you wake people up and ask them if they'd like to go to a shelter. Not everybody does. Not everybody wants to. But it's intimidating to go up to folks and ask them that question. But you're in groups of. Last night we were in a group of like 5 people, and we had 2 police officers with us. We were going through Crown Heights to speak with people, and people were receptive. One gentleman wanted our help, and we gave him some resources. So I often wonder, like, do people know about these resources, and right. To get out there and let people know, and also hopefully by doing this count of street homeless people, then the city can come up with better programs, and I think it's in some way connected to the federal government, mm-hmm. and so the federal government devotes resource. The federal government understands how much of an issue it is, and will devote resources in that way. So, yeah, I mean, we were out there. The count started at 12 p.m. and we were out there probably till 2:30. But some people I know were out till like 4 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really remarkable. Like, wow, people do care about this city, and I'm just always fascinated by the people you meet at something like that.
Oh, I can't imagine.
And one thing I forgot to mention, which is part of the heavy inspiration for this project, is I learned about a statistic in New York that it's like the 3rd lowest city of the 50 major cities in the U.S. It has the 3rd lowest participation rate in terms of volunteerism.
Wow, that's crap.
yeah, and so it's like, I think it's like 23%, but as compared to some place like upstate in Rochester and in Minneapolis, it's closer to 46%. And I really do think volunteering it's kind of the Trojan horse to get people to care more about and see more of the city that's around them.
Yeah, it always is fascinating to me, because, like, like I said, I've kind of stuck with one organization, but mm-hmm. There's other things I've sort of given money to, mm-hmm. and I think it's we have so much money in this city, and mm-hmm. we're all so very fortunate, mm-hmm. and then you think about the fact that there's so much you could do. Mm-hmm. It's not the end of it. It's not just about writing a check. Mm-hmm. That oftentimes, the impact that you make on people when you can just spend some time to talk with them.
Exactly.
Or they just see you and see that someone actually cares. Like you're literally handing them a meal, or you're literally just, having a chat with them, can do an immense amount of good. But it's also good for you. Like the reason I stayed with this organization is that like it's my favorite part of the year. Like I do like there's 5 things we do a year plus our meetings, and like the 5 things we do with the girls is like the favorite part of the year because like these kids are just so excited. And they, literally, like we had a few years ago, we did an event with them where I brought Netflix into one of the schools.
Oh wow!
And so
like some
one of a writer who had a movie that was premiering on Netflix. So we brought the writer into the school, and so the kids got the book ahead of time, and so they read the book and then got to meet the author. Now she's not big famous celebrity. There was a big famous celebrity attached to the movie.
Right.
That celebrity wasn't there. It was just the author. And like these kids, they Googled her.
Yeah.
And so when she got off the elevator, they just like rushed her. And it was like there was tears in her eyes, and she literally was like, I cannot believe they did this.
Yeah.
And you could just see what it meant to her for these kids who like asked really awesome questions and were just genuinely enthralled. And it was like the most heartening thing because like, how often do they get to see someone who looks like them, who wrote this incredible book, Story of Survival, and she's just here like, hey, I want to talk to you and have a straight conversation. And so like this does stuff for you internally, and like you feel good. And like, the more you give, the more you get back. And I think as a community builder for Uber, this probably better than anybody. It's like what you were able to give when you first started and what you got back was a tenfold. And I think that's oftentimes we think about, it's not about being selfish, it's about like giving to others because like that will end up helping serve you in really remarkable and surprising ways.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there is some self-interest to this and that's great. Like there is something you've heard of like runner's high or something called helper's high. And that's the feeling you get when you help somebody or you do something good for your community. So, I mean, I think that sounds amazing, the work you've done. And I think those are probably the most valuable, like volunteering is when you do stick with an organization and you really understand it and get to know the people and can bring in writers from Netflix shows. That's amazing. Yeah. It reminds me of another organization that I've done a couple things with, which is called Behind the Book. And they have, I think it's all grade levels, but they have students in public schools read a book, and then they get the author to come in and speak with the students about it. So
cool.
It's really neat. They have just like they basically track down the authors and get them into the classroom. And the one that I did was called the book Yummy, and the students came up with their own ending to the story.
Awesome.
So it's cool for the author to think about things,
yeah.
And also just the differences in the students, the way they interpreted the story, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I think that, I think we talk a lot, and this is sort of what goes into my next question, is, we talk a lot about self-care, and what do we do to sort of help ourselves, like, feel better, and, when we're all in these kind of crazy, busy roles, whatever they may be. And so I'm going to ask this question, but I know the answer. Ed, what do you do for self-care?
What do I do for self-care? I like a good massage, I guess that's what I would say. And then sometimes just slowing down. I think I tend to get excited about and do tons of, my wife's always like, you're doing too many things. So sometimes I heed that advice and slow down, but rarely.
Yeah. And so what do you hope will be the result of the year of this? So like, is it going to be one thing a day you're going to do, or is it going to be over the course of each month?
No, I mean, I have a newsletter that you volunteer. I'm doing it on Substack, but like I hope to address some like larger issues with that. Like something that's coming up is the census, and the census is a huge deal because it only happens every 10 years, and so many things, so much funding from the federal government is based on the census count, and it in communities like Brooklyn and other underrepresented communities, the counts are much lower than they should be. And so as a result, I mean, I think Brooklyn may even lose like a congressional seat. Like there's so many things, so much funding that's determined by the census. And so that's something I want to get out there and share with people. So the newsletter is going to be kind of addressing those types of broader issues. And then I'm going to have the personal experience of having and knowing all of these organizations. But like my real goal is to get more people involved and to get out there in the community.
You need a year volunteer pledge.
I know. Well, I actually thought about I should do that. I should do that. It's a good idea.
Yeah, it's like put your money where your mouth is. It's like I want $100 from you guys. Just pledge to do this, and then Shane did it. And at the end of the year, we'll do a party.
Yeah,
and then we'll donate to all the organizations.
Yeah, I love that.
Take it. Done. Take that
hired.
Well, Ed, it's been such a great conversation. It's so good to catch up with you.
Likewise.
And we'll definitely follow along, and if we can share out, we'll put all the organizations that you put in on our show notes so people can follow along. And I think the gift of service is a two-way street. So I think it's going to be really incredible what you're able to accomplish over this next year. And thank you so much for sharing it as you just started off on the journey.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Great.
And that's our show. Thanks, everyone.